This video is about your chapter 4 exercise, the break-even analysis. Break-even analysis for the cost management 3100, I will introduce two different models to help you to make two different decisions. So briefly in speaking, so break-even analysis is kind of like the decision-making tools to help managers or people to make decisions. And the first types of the model, the break-even model we will learn is called the model to help to make decision relates to if make money. And if you still remember like the physics here, like the funnel of the NPD process. So we have 5 phases, and during phase 2 is what we call the business case analysis. So the phase 2 is like you need to answer questions about like what's about the new product ideas to help you to meet your expectations about the sales growth or to align with your business strategies and so on and so on. And during the phase 2, the break-even model, the first types of break-even model I will introduce will be very, very helpful to help you to make that decision because it will give you the answers directly about if this idea, the new product idea, will help you to make money in the future or not. And if you take a look with these figures here, so we have two lines. The green line is what we called the total revenue lines, and the red line is called the total cost lines. And for these two lines, we found a very, very interesting stuff over there. So when the total revenue interact with the total cost, which means like they interact with each other, like they have the interceptions points over there. When the revenues equals to the cost, we find like the situations are totally different. So before the quantity we call the break-even quantity here, we find the total cost, the red line is always over the green line, which is the revenue line, which means like the money you like spend on buying stuffs will always be larger than the money you make. So this is what we call you may lose money. And after the break-even quantity, like the green line, which is the revenue line, is always above the cost line, which is the red line. So which means like the money you make will always be larger the money you spend on cost. So you will have a positive profits, which means you will make money. So this interception points will be very helpful to help you to figure out if make money or not. And this point is what we call the break-even quantity point. And then we back to the model. So the all of the things we need to do is to find the quantity. So what is the number of the units as the break-even quantity you need to sell? Then it will help you to make money. Then we use some like the notations to represent the revenues and the cost. Most of the situation we use a P to represent the sales price per unit, and we use a small c to represent the variable cost, and we use the F to represent the fixed cost, and we use Q with a star to represent the break-even, and we use the symbol Q here to represent the quantity. I mean, the number of the units you sell or the number of units you need to buy, like as the materials. So now let's focus on the revenues and the cost because we consider like when the total revenues equals to the total cost. So how do you calculate the revenues? In general, the revenues we use R to represent it. It equals to the Q, which means the number of units you sell times with P. So it depends on how many units you sell and how much the customer need to pay per unit. So if we know the sales price per unit and we know the quantity, we just use Q times P. It will be the total money you make. So for example, like if you sell 2 units and each of the units like values $2, then the revenues you earn will be 2 times 2, which is $4. So this is how we calculate the revenue. Then we next focus on the total cost. So for the total cost, we consider 2 different costs. The first one is what we call fixed cost. What does mean fixed cost? It means like the cost you spend on will not be changed, depends on the number of units you produce or you sell. So for example, the money you spend on buying equipment, the money you spend on building constructing a new buildings as the factories. So those money you spend on, like for example, you spend on $1 million to buy one equipment, and you can use that equipment to produce 100 units this month, and you can use this same equipment to produce another 100 next month. So whatever, like how many units you produced, you still need to buy $1 million at the beginning to buy that equipment, and it will not change. You produce 100, you need to buy that equipment as $1 million. If you produce 1,000 units of products, you still need to pay for like $1 million to buy that equipment. So it will not change. It's kind of like the stable cost. The cost will not change, depends on the number of units you produce. This is what we call fixed cost. So most of the situation, like the equipment cost, the buildings cost, the factories cost, those types of cost is what we call fixed cost. And under contrast, except for the fixed cost, we also consider another types of cost we call variable cost. So variable cost means like those costs depends on exactly the number of units you produced. So, and the total variable cost, we use the C, small c, which is the variable cost per unit, times the quantity. So it depends on how many units you produce or how many units you sell. So that types of the cost is what you need to spend. For example, the money you spend on buying raw materials to produce the products. So it depends on how many units you produce. If you produce 100, you need to buy the materials to produce 100 units. If you would like to produce 1,000, then you need to like spend money on buying materials for produce 1,000 units. So it will change, depends on the number of units you produce. Those types of the cost is what we call the variable cost. And for the total cost, we consider these two, the fixed cost and the variable cost. So the total cost will be equal to fixed cost plus the variable cost. And back to the figures we have over there, so we find like the quantity, the break-even quantity is the intersection point. So which means the total revenues equal to the total cost. And we found any numbers, any values which is larger than the break-even quantity, then you will make money. So you will have the positive profits. So let's focus on here. So let's find the Q, the break-even quantity with a star. The break-even quantity, it means when the revenues, which is Q times P, equal to the total cost is here. So which is fixed cost plus variable cost, which is small c times Q. Then we move Q on one side. We just do a little bit transformation, like to find how to compute the Q directly. So we make a little bit transformation. We move Q on one side. Then we will have Q times P minus C times Q. So we move this portion to the left side. So minus C times Q. And on the right side, we still have F, which is the fixed cost left. So we have F here. And then we put Q outside. So we will have Q times the P minus C still equal to big F. And then we will know Q here will equal to F divided by P minus C. And because how we find this Q, we make the revenues equals to the cost. So the Q is not a normal Q, it's actually what we call break-even Q. So break-even quantity. So we use a star here. This is how this equation is found. So break-even quantity equals to the fixed cost divided by the price per unit minus the variable cost per unit. So if you know the values for each of them, you will be able to know the break-even quantity. And the objective to find the break-even quantity is to help you to answer the questions if you make money. Can you make money? So if you find like you can sell more than the break-even quantity, you will make money. Otherwise, you will lose money. So this is the first types of the model. The model relates to answer the questions, can you make money? And for the next lines, I gave you examples. So this example, I provide you some information about that, and I ask you two questions. So about the break-even quantity, what is the break-even quantity? Like based on the information you have here. And then I also ask you how much money will you make? So how much money will you make relates to the revenues and costs. So how much money you make, it equals to how much money you earn, which is the revenues, minus how much money you spent, which is the cost. So revenues minus the cost is how much you will make, what we call the profit. So for the chapter 4 exercise, the first problem is will also like ask you the profits, stuffs, as well as the break-even quantity. So if you remember the equation here, then you will be able to find the quantity. And be very careful about how to find the profits. The profits always equal to the revenues minus the costs. And the revenues is P times Q, while the cost, we consider two different costs, the fixed cost and the variable cost. So this is what we have for the first types of the model. Now let's move to the second break-even model, which helps you to answer the questions related to if outsourcing. So outsourcing, like if you review like the previous slides, you will be able to find like the different strategies to help you to reduce your cost. Then you will be able to like make money something. And the outsourcing means like this is one of the strategies. So sometimes instead of making by yourselves, it probably will be a better idea to buy from others directly. So for example, the McDonald's, they may not produce like the breads by themselves. They may just buy the breads. They may not like produce the weights. They buy the weight directly. So sometimes like based on some strategies, it may help you to save money, or it will be better for your business to buy from others directly instead of making. So the second break-even model will help you to answer like if you should buy or you should make. So briefly, if outsourcing. And for these types of the decision, like for the first types, like if we make money, we consider revenues, we consider cost, then we focus on the profits. And for the second model, we only focus on the cost. So whatever you decide to make or you decide to buy, we only focus on the cost. But the logic is actually the similar. So we find if the cost for making will be larger than the cost for buying, which means like you will spend more money on making than you should buy. If the cost of buying is larger than the cost of making, you should make. So be careful. Right now, we don't care about like the revenues. We only focus on the cost. So we wanted to find less cost. So if the line of making is above buying, which means you spend more money on making, you should buy. If the buying line is above the making, which means you spend more money on buying, you should make. So the logic is the same, but we just like consider the different situations here. So for outsourcing, we focus on fixed cost for buy option, the variable cost for buy option, and the fixed cost for make option, and the variable cost for make option, and the same. So the total cost of buy is just like, we also focus on these two types of the cost, the fixed cost and the variable cost. And the total cost for make is still like the fixed cost and the variable cost. And how we find that? We found like if they equal to each other, which means like we will be able to find just like looks like this. So we still have these charts, and we also have two lines over there. And one is the make line, one is the buy line. So based on like the numbers here, we find like this is the buy line, this is the make line. And we will be able to find the intersection points. So we will be able to find the break-even quantity. And we find like after the break-even quantity, the buy line is always above making line. So which means the cost you spend on buy. So this is like both of the lines relates to the cost. So it means the cost you spend on buying is larger than making, so you should make. So this is like the logic. Once you find the break-even quantity based on the second model here, if the quantity you can sell is larger than the break-even quantity, you should make. Because you will spend more money on buying. But if the quantity you can sell is smaller, which is this portion here, then you should buy. You just buy directly from others instead of making by yourselves. So this is like the logic here. And the same, we just like translates, like we just do a transformation for this equation, and then we will be able to find the quantity, the break-even quantity here equals to the fixed cost of making minus the fixed cost of buying divided by the variable cost of buying minus variable cost of making. Then you will be able to find what is the break-even quantity for these types of the model. So for this example, for this second model, I also have the examples. So a fast food restaurant like relates to if they should make the salad by themselves or buy the salad directly. And then I gave you all the details here, so you will be able to check that. And the chapter for exercise, the second problem is really similar to this one. And except for the examples, I also gave you a practice, like, so you can just read the information here and try to solve this practice over there. And I also gave you like all the information here. So to solve the problem over there. And this is about the chapter for exercise.